Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this Friday evening. We're excited to share with you about our mission trip to Kenya. And let's begin with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we're so thankful for this evening. We're thankful that we can come together and share memories and share the blessings that you poured out to us on this mission trip to Kenya. We ask that you be with us. We just ask that our words be from you, that we are able to show your love through the things that we did, and that we are able to inspire others to go on mission trips and to work for you. And we just ask your blessing on this evening, and we ask these things in Jesus' name, amen. Well, let me share with you a little bit first, before we get started, about Maranatha. Maranatha is the organization that we went with, and a special thank you to the Marsas, who years ago inspired me as I was sitting here in church listening to one of their AYA presentations about a mission trip that they had gone to, that they had done in Kenya. I was like, oh, that's what I want to do with the kids. And so shortly thereafter, I made arrangements and we went on our first Maranatha mission trip to Kenya back in 2019. And let me tell you a little bit about Maranatha. This is what they do. Their ministry is construction of wells, of schools, of churches. They'll go into a community, they will dig a well, then they will build a church and a school. Now, in the case of Kimagoro, where we went, the school was already there, but they did go in, and the kids had to walk like a mile downhill and to get to the water. And so they would have to carry their water back. So Maranatha did build a well for them. And so they do have projects that differ a bit, but generally speaking, they are in the construction and the well digging business. Perhaps you guys have heard of one-day churches. We had the opportunity to worship in a one-day church, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I just want to let you know that Maranatha is an amazing ministry. If you're looking for a ministry to support, Maranatha is certainly a ministry worth your consideration, because they do so much good for communities. But let's go ahead and give a little background. Okay, all you kids up here, how many of you have been on a mission trip before? Raise your hand. Fantastic. How many of you, this was your very first mission trip that you had ever been on? That's exciting. So how many also, I have a couple of first-time flyers. Jasmine was my first-time flyer, and also Troy. The Foxes aren't here yet, but they also went on this mission trip, and Troy, this was his first time flying as well. Now, let's give you a little background on what we did to prepare for this mission trip. What were some of the things that we did ahead of time to get ready for this mission trip? Somebody who's got a mic, or pass it to somebody who wants to speak. Tell us what we did.
We sat and wrote out letters to fundraise and mailed them out to people to try and get money to help support the mission trip and to be able to do the good things that we did. So that was one.
So that was one of the first things, and many of you are supporters of this. You responded to those letters that the kids mailed out, and the donations poured in. So thank you to our donors. So that was the first thing we did. Then what else did we do as time drew closer? What did we do to physically prepare for it? Jasmine.
We collected personal care items and crayons.
Okay, so what were we going to do with crayons, Jasmine?
Give them to the students.
Okay, so we were going to Kimagoro boarding school, and this is a school, we would say K through 8. They call it primary 1 and primary 2 through 8th grade. And so we wanted to bring the kids there a special gift. So we did a crayon drive. We did it here. We did it at school, and we also did a personal care item drive, and we did that here at church as well as school. And we'll talk a little bit later about what we actually did with those personal care items. Okay, what else did you guys do to prepare for this trip?
We prepared a week of prayer program for the school that we were going to be at. We learned children's stories, we did health talks, we did nature nuggets, we learned all this stuff, and we practiced a bunch of like little kid songs with Mr. Mitchell. And we also prepared sermons that we were hoping to preach. I don't know if we're going to talk about that later. Nifty.
One of the things that we prepared for as well, as Kaylee mentioned, as the week of prayer, I just want to give a shout out to Joyce Gerard. I don't think she's here this evening, but she helped cut out thousands of pieces of paper for crafts that we did. And you'll probably see in there later on little kids holding up crafts. So she spent so much time and energy helping us with that. That was just an amazing thing. So we prepared for this, and let me just give you a little heads up. The sermons that we didn't preach, we'll talk about that later. We're actually going to do that. Here's a little shout out for in March, the last week of March. We're going to have a revival series at the school like we did last year. And the sermons that the kids prepared are the sermons that we're going to be presenting at the revival series. Will somebody tell, in a nutshell, what was the theme of the sermon? Somebody that, Jenna, you've got the mic. Tell us what the theme of the sermons, based on what chapter of the Bible?
So we studied Hebrews 11 and memorized it. And so then we took parts of it and like the people that the verses talked about, and we told their stories during in our sermons. So yeah.
And we studied that. We looked at it in the Bible. We looked at Spirit of Prophecy, what it had to say about these people and these great people of faith. And so they developed these sermons around that. Now, when it was time to pack, you guys were allowed a carry-on and a checked. And that sounds like a lot, but what had to be put in your luggage?
We had to put Steps to Christ and like all the crayons and the glasses and everything else.
So every person going had a variety of things that we had to get there. The glasses, the thousands of glasses that we took were divided up among the participants. The crayons, the personal care items, soap, Steps to Christ, stuffed animals, all these things got dispersed amongst all the people going. So their entire suitcase was not their own, but we had to get this there. Now, last year we took, I think it was maybe 600 or 700 steps to Christ. And I thought, oh, that's not enough. This year we're going to take more. And we did take more. We took 800, and I thought, that's going to be enough. Next year I'm going to take more again, because that still wasn't enough. Praise the Lord. We'll talk about those in a little bit after a while as well. Now, somebody tell me, we were able to start the day a leisurely pace on Sunday morning. Was that the reality?
Pretty much never.
No.
I don't think it
Never.
happened once.
No. Emily, when did we leave at the from the school? Emily.
It was 4?
We had
I
to meet
think.
at the school at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Some of them 3:45, and we left by 4:30. So it was an early start on Sunday, January the 21st. And when you go far away, it takes many days to travel. So we left early Sunday morning. We didn't actually get to Kenya until
Tuesday. Monday night.
Monday night, and then that was 2 days, but we still weren't where we needed to be. It still took us another day of travel to actually get to Baumette County, and from there, that's where we did our work. So traveling is, just to get there, took 3 days. So it was a big production just to get there. Now, we did have kind of an exciting layover. Where did we get to layover? It was pretty exciting for some of the kids.
We got to layover in Paris, which was a lot of fun. We got to
So, granted, it was just the airport, and so there's the great debate, do we get to count that or not? So anyway, but we did have it was fun for a few hours. We got to eat a croissant and a macaron, and so we felt a little bit of Paris. And Judah, what happened to you?
Don't trust Parisian airports. It's not a good idea. No, I'm just joking. I had 2 suitcases, and one of them, a nice Parisian man came up and said, "Oh, we'll take this to Africa for you." Never got to Africa. It was a little bit scary because I had Steps to Christ and some glasses, and of course the rest of the clothes I needed for the trip, my hard hat and everything for construction. Luckily, would you like me to share now? Okay. Later, almost near the end of the trip, I don't really know where my suitcase came from. Some guy just kind of walked up to me and gave it to me. I'm like, "Oh yeah, we got this now." I'm like, "What?" But apparently it got back to me somehow.
So we can trust the French airports after all, maybe. Okay, so let's talk about what we did there. So essentially, every day we were divided into 2 teams. One team went to construction, went to Kimagoro School, and the other team went to vision clinics. So let's talk first about construction. So we spent 5.5 days working construction there at Kimagoro School. So somebody tell me, pass the mic around, and somebody tell me, what was it that we were doing at Kimagoro School? What was our goal there as far as construction is concerned?
Okay, so we would get there in the morning, and we had a foreman there who was working for Maranatha, and we had about 8 or 10 workers working also for Maranatha, but they were not in charge, but they would also help around. And so we started with 1 layer of block and a frame for trusses that was already there, and then we built the walls and tied all the rebar and poured all the concrete and all that stuff.
So when we got there, Marcus, what did you see? What as far as the construction site that we were going to build, what was built already?
They had pre-laid the foundation with plumbing, and they had done the first layer of block and already run all the rebar for the in the concrete, and then they had put your steel roof trusses and your poster holding that up.
Okay, just a side note, when it's your turn to talk, make sure you hold the microphone close to your mouth, okay, because some of you are holding it too far away. Okay, so when we got there, concrete was poured, the first row of block, and some framing, and that's about it. So what was, and somebody tell me, what was it exactly that we were building?
A bathhouse or a bathroom or something.
Yes, it was going to be bathrooms and showers for later for the school. And what was the goal, Jarrett? What was the goal for us when we were there?
Just to get the exterior walls done.
Very good. Now, Jarrett, tell us, what did we actually accomplish?
Well, we got all the exterior done, or most of it, in 3 days. We had a little bit of the very top to do, but that was about it. And by the 5th day, we had most of the interior walls done too.
And did you say we also put the roof on?
Oh yeah, we did the roof.
So we did a lot more, as usual, and I'm going to brag on these kids. As usual, we did more than what was expected of us. We were able to not only get the exterior walls built, the roof on, but also some interior walls built as well. And so that was really exciting to see these kids work really hard on that. So let's describe, when we got to Kimagoro that very first day, how were we met at Kimagoro?
So it was really cool. Everyone was gathered outside. We could see them from a hill away because the road was like, you could have a straight view to the hill of the school. You could see this cluster of kids way in the distance just waiting for us. You come up and they have the Pathfinder in uniform lined up in 2 rows, and they wanted us to kind of make 2 rows in between them. And so we had these 2 single file lines, and we walked all through their campus into their big church, and had music playing, and kids were all over the place saying hi and everything, and they sat us down in these nice chairs while they sat on benches. It was a really, really cool experience.
So we were definitely welcomed with open arms. And I think one of the things that will stand out for me, and I can't sadly remember the exact wording, maybe somebody else will remember, but the principal said, you know, we have prayed for you. And that just was really impactful because I remember, you know, thinking about, okay, we're praying for them, we're praying for them, we're praying for them. It works the other way too. They were praying for our team as well before we arrived, and so that was really neat. So I would like for us to take a moment and describe the campus that's at Kimagoro right now. Let me before we start that, let me say, Maranatha is coming in on the ground level. In fact, only two other teams have gone before us. In fact, I saw them come in. The Cheeks came, there you go, wave your hands, yay, they were there was it October? October. And so they were there on a team, and so they were fantastic inside information for us. They're friends of the Andresses, and they were here before Christmas, and so they were able to share so much insight. And so it's exciting to be on the ground level. And what I mean by that is Maranatha is just beginning their work there. And by the time this is done, and this is not like a quick project, this is not going to get done in a year, by the time they're done with this project several years from now, this school is going to be magnificent. But let's describe the school now. So talk to me about what the school looked like when we arrived.
Do you mean the church or the actual school and classrooms?
Yeah, just like, what did you observe? If you were going to describe the campus, what is the campus like? The
campus was very beautiful, but a lot of the schoolrooms and stuff were dirt, and I actually it was sad to me that I actually made this connection, but I noticed that a lot of our barns here kind of look a little better, and it was just, I don't know, it was eye-opening in a way. And
so you're saying the floors were dirt?
Yeah, the floors were dirt, and the walls were thin, and it was easy for us to hit our heads, or at least us tall people. Their church was pretty decent, though. It was a rock wall church, and it had a concrete slab kind of in the middle of it running back, but then there was on the side and the other side it was dirt running down the side because it was bigger than what the foundation was poured for, I guess. And I didn't really see all of the dormitories, but the dormitories were similar to the classrooms. But they didn't have dirt, though. The dormitories had concrete foundation. But
when you think about a school, we think about our schools and the solid walls, and we open a window if things get hot. Tell us about the walls of the school. Somebody share what the walls were like of the school building.
Well, the classrooms, it looked like they were made of scrap wood. You could see in between the cracks, and so as you were walking by, you could see the people inside just through the wood. And I mean, they would have windows, obviously no glass, it was just an open window. The ones that people had built in the past were brick and mortar, and they had a boys' dorm that was made of that, but none of the newer buildings were in use yet. They were still using all of the older ones. The dorms for the boys and girls, it was they didn't have enough beds for everybody. There was 2 or 3 people to a bed, and there was about 60 girls in that one room or something, and it was very small. There was probably 20 beds and 60 girls in there, and it was very impoverished. There was not much. It was not very clean.
So imagine a twin bed and 3 girls sharing that twin bed. That's the type of situation we're looking at in classrooms as have been described. And maybe you'll notice a couple of pictures of the classrooms, and I think one of the things that stood out to some of the chaperones anyhow, we decorate our classrooms here, with posters and, pretty things like that, and their posters were torn and ragged and old, and it was just the best they had, though. And so, in all of this situation, poor school buildings, you know, crowded dormitories, dirt floors. The school kids just walked around sad all the time, didn't they?
No, they were like some of the happiest kids I've ever seen in my entire life. They were so happy and welcoming.
They just like loved you, like with all the love they had in their heart. They didn't hold anything back, and they were just so giving. And they even said, "We don't have much, but this is what we have, and we will give it all to you, like to us." And it was just so touching. Like we have more than they do, and we didn't give nearly as much as they gave to us.
It's interesting to me, and this is one of the most profound things of the entire trip, that the people with the least a lot of times have the biggest hearts for giving. And I could tell that their giving spirit didn't come from their material needs, but came from Christ. And that was really impactful to me, and I think it was impactful to a lot of us. Not just giving what they had physically when they could. We'll talk about the presents they gave us later, I'm sure. But giving their love was something that was more impactful to me than probably anything else on the trip. Seeing the grandiose animals and everything, it's just the simple faith and care that those kids had that really touched my heart.
Big, big smiles all around. Never gloom and doom, for sure. One more thing I want us to describe, because this is actually something that Maranatha is also in the process of working on, is a new kitchen for them. They have the building, but it's not completed yet. So somebody describe to me what their kitchen looks like.
So their kitchen was basically, like, I don't know, it's probably like, it was a shack. It was a complete shack. Like you could, like, it smelled really good in there. But they had this big pot where they just make everything.
And when she means big pot, she doesn't mean big pot. She means
big, like really big. And you would like see all the kids just line up in front for lunch and with their cups for the food, and they just all wanted to share like all their food. And even though, I mean, the kitchen was tiny, but they made some really good food in it, like despite the small resources.
So there was no electricity to the kitchen. It was all over fire that these big cauldrons were holding the food that was being cooked. And the guy that was the cook, he was really tall, and it was a low ceiling, and that guy was always sort of in there a little bit cramped, but always with such a big smile. But literally it was the shed in your backyard is in better shape than the shack that they cook their food in. The reason I describe all of these, I have the kids describe these buildings to you, is to understand the work that Maranatha is about to do there. They are in the process of basically remodeling their campus. They will have new dormitories, new bathhouses. The kids right now, they have to shower or bathe, if you will, with a bucket of water outside in a muddy enclosure. So they'll have new bathhouses, new dormitories, new kitchen, new dining hall. It's going to be incredible by the time Maranatha is done with this project. And it's exciting for us because we got to be in on the ground level. We get to see what it looked like at the beginning. And so in a few years, it's going to be exciting to see the pictures of how things have changed. Now, let's get back to construction, though. I'd like for you guys to tell me, pass the mic around to somebody who's not spoken yet, and tell me something that we did on construction. I know we said we laid blocks, but that didn't encompass everything that we did. What were some of the jobs that you guys did in construction?
We moved block, like a lot of block, like 3,000 blocks. And
he's not joking, actually. He's not.
We did this thing called striking, which like you put lines in the mortar just to make it look nice, I guess. I don't know.
And tell us about the time, Ansel, that maybe you were there. If you weren't there, then let somebody else answer this. But one time, and we'll discuss the rain, but at one time the truck couldn't get up the hill. And so what did you guys have to do? Were you there that day? Okay, tell us about that.
We had like unload half of the truck, and so it could get up, and then all the kids from the school had to like take all the blocks up to the school.
So they had to carry the blocks uphill, up along steep road to get to the school. So it wasn't just like taking the blocks from point A to point B. It was a whole new experience for that. Okay, so what else did we do at the construction site? We moved a lot of blocks. What else did you guys do?
We also got to weed this patch of yard by their bathroom.
Weeding? You had to weed? You went to Kenya to weed?
Yeah.
That was something that might have been said.
So a couple of us went over there, and it was just like, it looked like a patch of grass. Like, it was like solid weeds, and we were like, get the weeds or like the grass too? And so they were like, nope, everything. And so we just started pulling up the grass. And it kind of seemed pointless because we thought it would just grow back like in a couple days. But the end goal was they were going to sow new grass, and it's going to be like a really nice like flush area of yard. And so at the time, it was kind of, while we were sitting there, some of us were just thinking like, I wonder why this, like, there seemed like there could have been like a bigger need, but then like just keep the end goal in mind and just helping the campus like be more beautiful, even in the small things too.
So we helped in a beautification process. So pulling the weeds, so by now the new grass should be sown because the principal said that he was going to, as soon as he got the seed, that he was going to sow it within the next week or so. So hopefully by now that is sown, and really there were blessings in that. I know that a couple of you shared with me that you had good experiences because you were able to interact with some of the school kids with that. So it's all good, right? Okay, so what else were some things that you did? I know I had some guys mixing concrete and mortar. Who were my guys?
Me and Alec have been mixing concrete and mortar every single mission trip, and so we have a real concrete connection. It's deeply rooted in sand and rocks and concrete mix. We also had some other people help us this time, like Jarrett helped a few times, and Elijah Dean, and Jackson too. It was pretty nice, because honestly, I don't know if Alec feels the same way, but we kind of got our senior treatment. Like, we didn't have to lift as many heavy buckets this time. It was kind of nice, to be honest. But it's always a fun job doing it with Alec and stuff. It's fun.
Did you want to comment on that, Alec?
Well, I was just going to say, and Troy helped a little too. He joined us. That was it.
That actually, before I forget about it, if you have been, this will be actually, the senior graduating class this year will be the first class that has ever had the opportunity to go on 4 mission trips with GAA. If this was your 4th mission trip, raise your hand. That's exciting. That's pretty awesome. So anyhow, did any of you before, let me ask you this, before this trip, and Alec and Judah alluded to this, we've done this type of thing on multiple mission trips. How many of you now know how to lay block? See, what a marketable skill. That's amazing. How many of you, and there will be a couple of you, but did anybody before mission trips, either this year, last year, the year before, know how to lay block? A couple of you did. Okay, so most of the kids, though, are learning skills as well. So how many of you learned to do something new on this trip? Did anybody learn something new on this trip? Caleb, what's something new that you learned? Pass the mic to Caleb.
We used this tool to make the concrete look nice, I guess, or mortar. Yeah.
Right. So it wouldn't be sloppy because when you put the block on and it squirts out, they have the little tool that they run down and they make that nice and clean. So that was a good thing. I'd like to ask, does anyone have an interesting experience from construction that you'd like to share? Emily's got one.
So I was on the weeding crew. And we weeded for like 3 days straight. But on like this first day, I was weeding and I suddenly see this like patch of metal. I'm like, what in the world? So I pick it up and it's a fork. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I actually used it to get up some of the tougher weeds. But like around lunchtime, I saw the principal walk by. I was like, ooh. So I ran up and I handed it to him. He's like, here, we found this. And he was like, thank you so much. And he was just so thankful that we found it. And it just really impacted me because they needed stuff, obviously.
So even forks are valuable, so that was appreciated. Does someone else have something interesting that they'd like to share from construction? Lily Beth.
So Kaylee and I were laying block on one side of the church, and the way we were looking, there was like this wall of trees, but there was like a gap and you could kind of see a hill. And we were up on the scaffolding, so we had like a bird's eye view, and it was really cool because on that hill were all of the students. And so we were there, and all of a sudden we just heard this cheer, and then we saw them, and then we waved, and well, at first Kaylee was waving at them, and I was like, what are you doing? And then she's like, I can see them! And then we look, and there's all these kids, and they start waving, and then we like wave back, and then they kept waving, and then they cheered, and it just went on forever. And then like we kind of like did that back and forth, and then they copied us, and it was so funny to have an entire class just copying your every move from the scaffolding.
So there was a lot of fun mixed in with the hard labor, a lot of rewarding experiences. Riley.
So one of my favorite things was on our bathroom breaks, walking back and forth to like across campus from the work site to the bathrooms. You would just get swarmed with children trying to touch your skin, your hair, just whatever, playing with you. That was the highlight of my day and made it really easy to get through the day. But most of the week I was laying brick, carrying brick, whatever, but towards the end I joined in on the weeding crew. And there was this little girl who came outside the fence where we were weeding, and she would just reach her hand through and just pick as many weeds as she could reach and try to help us out, and it was just nice to see.
So sometimes the students got to visit with other school children. Other times you got to visit with animals. Can somebody tell us about an animal? We'll probably see some pictures up on the screen of some of those. What did animal made itself present? And poor thing, it's probably still in shock because of all the people that handled it.
There was a chameleon that was passed around so everyone could take a picture with it. And
I think he was like brown by the time he got done with you guys. You know how we have the expression, you get sick, you like turn blue. I think he just turned brown. But anyhow, but it was fun because all the kids many of the kids had a chance to have their picture taken with the chameleon. So anybody else have something they want to share about construction before we move on to a different thing?
So one of the new experiences I had was I've never had an audience while working before. We would work, and then like at the first day we had like 50 kids just watching us the whole time, and they're just amazed that white people could work too. It was crazy.
Facts. That's probably facts.
Fair enough. So yes, to say the least, the children were very appreciative. They understood why we were there, and they were very appreciative of the work that was being done, and really excited to spend time with the kids. So I want to talk a little bit about geography. This was not the Kenya that I think, or the Africa that most people have in mind. A lot of us thought brown landscape, kind of drier type, but somebody tell me, what was it like over there?
It kind of reminded me a lot of here, like surprisingly enough. Like they had pastures and like cows all over the place, and just all sorts of different greenery and trees. There were even pine trees there, which was weird because it was hot, but it was a kind of a cooler climate because of the like elevation, which was another weird thing because it wasn't terribly hot, but then at the same time you would fry in the sun because of it being right on the equator. It was a little interesting, but
So we pretty well sat on the equator, which meant we had a lot of red noses and a lot of rednecks. And that's not because we're from here, that's because we burned like crazy out in the sun. But it was not overly hot. The temperatures range between 50 and 70 degrees. And it was quite pleasant, actually. And it was beautiful, 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 beautiful. I can't tell you how green and lush everything was. And I want someone to speak, though, of getting to our destination. You know, I told you it took us 3 days to actually get there. Now we're there, and you think, oh, okay, we'll hop in the bus and just be right over there. No, it wasn't just hop in the bus and we'll be right there. We hopped in the bus and sat on the bus for how long?
Like an hour and a half. And so...
It was closer to 2 hours, sometimes more if we got stuck or something.
I stand corrected. Anyway, so we would get on these buses and we would drive through the cities and stuff, and then we would turn off onto a dirt road. And yeah, there was no sleeping on the bus, and you would get a free back massage because the roads were so bumpy and there were potholes, and you were kind of curious if you were still on the road at times because of, like, we're going to talk about the rain later, but it washed out the road many days, and so it was just mud. And excuse me. And so it was definitely an adventure getting to the school, and like we were going up and down hills, and it was crazy.
Let me put it into perspective. Once our hotel in Baumet was on a main road, and we traveled on this main road for around 15, 20 minutes in that neighborhood. Then we would turn off on this dirt road. It was approximately 10 miles to the school from that point. But from that point, it took us about an hour and a half to get there. That explains how slow we had to go because the roads were so bad. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the roads and what made them so dangerous. First off, let me say, or one of you address this. Talk to me about the weather. We went and looking at the 10-day forecast when we left, what was the weather supposed to do? Santi?
Well, it was like supposed to be really rainy and stuff, but in construction, whenever we would work, like it was just fine. It was just sunny, and when we'd leave, it would like start raining a bunch, and yeah.
And so that was a real fear of, I don't want to say fear, but a concern of mine. I'm looking at the 10-day forecast, and I'm like, I'm taking a group of kids over here to work, and every day it's going to rain. It's going to rain on the work. It's going to rain on the fun excursions. It's just going to rain nonstop. But was that our experience?
No.
The rain came in the late evening or during the night. Praise the Lord. So it did not hinder the work that we needed to do there at all, but it did make driving interesting. Abigail, will you speak? I know that you actually wrote about that in an essay, and so tell a little bit, and this is going to panic some people because it actually panicked me when I read it because I'm like, oh, I didn't know this. But anyway, speak to us about the roads in the rainy conditions.
So on our way to the school, there's this one section where the road kind of split into two sections, and one went lower and one went higher. And right before the split of the road, there was like a complete drop off on one side, and like a straight up wall of mountain on the right. And one day we were on our way there, and there was some pedestrians walking on the right side, and so we were trying to go closer to the left side. And it was really muddy, and it had rained torrential rains the night before, so it was super muddy, and we just felt ourselves like sliding, like the backside, just like sliding towards the left, and we all were like, lean to the right, think light thoughts, and try not to be too heavy on that side. And so but it kept sliding and sliding, and finally it stopped, and we were like on the edge of the road. And we had an amazing driver and an amazing God. He kept us off. the cliff, and we kept driving straight, and we got back on track, but that was a little nerve-wracking. Alec had amazing humor during that time. He was like, well, if we fall off, at least we'll get a mouthful of tea, because there was a tea, like, at the bottom, tea field in the bottom, and so, anyways, thankful the Lord protected us there. It was kind of nerve-wracking, so.
Our angels that excelled in strength truly protected that bus that day. In the mornings, we would pray for the angels that excel in strength to protect our vehicles as we traveled to the work site, and they worked overtime on that day. Abigail mentioned something that I want to note too. We talked about the beautiful hillsides. One of the things that they grow over there is tea, and there's a huge tea factory right near the school. And so you would see fields of tea and people picking the tea. And after a day's work, you would earn, if you maxed out as really a lot of tea that you could pick, you would make $2 to $3 a day. So that's how hard these women are working in the tea fields, and how very little that they're getting paid. So talk to me, what are some, as we rode, because it was, as we've established, an hour and a half to 2 hours one way, you got to look out the window a lot. What were some interesting things that you observed out the window?
There were a lot of other schools, like, on the way there,
Okay,
too.
so we saw a lot of schools. What else did we see? Jasmine?
Someone was like transporting a whole couch on a motorbike.
Okay, you have never seen, Robert's Furniture learned some things while we were over there. Let me tell you what, couches don't have to be delivered in a closed truck. You strap them on to a motorcycle and you are good to go. You can carry 15 or 20 chairs on a motorcycle. It is amazing the way they transport furniture. And people. You stack on a bunch of people on a motorcycle as well. What else were some things that we saw? Kaylee?
Literally everywhere we turned, there were kids and people just waving at us, like, everywhere. So, like, it was, like, hard to fall asleep because I'm like, man, I don't want to miss waving at somebody, because it just literally brightens your day. We felt, like, so famous because we're just, like, like, it was just, like, the parade wave kind of thing. We were just, like, they just care so much about us. I mean, I don't know, maybe just they're interested in us. And it was just, like, so cool, just feeling so special, and just being able to see, like, sometimes there would be a group of kids and they didn't look super happy, and you wave at them and their faces just light up, and it was just, like, it made your day. Like, after a hard work day, driving back, like, another hour and a half or 2 hours, just having so many people wave at you and smile at you, it gives you the energy that you lost the whole day. So it was amazing.
Also, we saw zebras just on the side of the road, at least like one day. And I was like waiting for like the safari to see a zebra, and then I was just looking out, I'm like, what? There's one, like right there. And like baboons, like, and monkeys everywhere. But yeah, that was really cool too.
And some of the kids like appeared out of like nowhere to wave at us. It was kind of scary, actually.
I think one of the way that it was described to me best was what the Cheeks told me before Christmas when they visited here. They said it was like you were in a parade every day. So it was kind of fun. Okay, we saw some other. Okay, Alec, yes, go ahead.
Well, another thing I was gonna say, like, adding on to what she said about the people just kind of showing up out of nowhere. We got stuck one time. And there, like, when you're looking around, sometimes there's like a bunch of people, and sometimes there's just like kind of nobody around because everybody's just like off on the side of the roads, and you can't really see them because there's like brush and everything. But we got stuck, and like a whole bunch of people just showed up to help us, and they were like really nice, and they filled in the ditch so that we could get our vehicle through, and it was just really cool because they just kind of appeared out of thin air. It was interesting.
You know, you've heard the expression, get the ox out of the ditch on the Sabbath day. Well, we had to get the bus out of the ditch on the Sabbath day, and the kids like basically helped build part of a road so we could get our bus out of the stuck mud. What else did we see? I'm thinking an animal that we saw, many animals every day, the same type of animal along the way. Do you remember what that was?
Well, about the motorcycle still? Yeah, like we saw one guy carrying a cow on his lap or something.
That's true. I saw a cow being transported on a motorcycle. This is true, yes.
Yeah, and like live chickens, like they're still alive, just dangling there. Yeah.
There's also a lot of farm animals there because people graze a lot of animals. And so I learned that one of the reasons Kenyan time is a little bit more flexible is you might be driving down the road and just have some guy passes 700 sheep in front of your bus or something, and it takes an extra 20 minutes to get somewhere. And there's also donkeys everywhere. And so you'll be driving and there's like 5 or 6 donkeys just boop, ba-doop, 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 just walking down the road. It's pretty cool, actually.
And you're allowed to graze your animals along the side of the road. And so you see a lot of cows and sheep and goats along the side of the road because that's considered public domain. So, Jarrett, yeah.
So I think in the couple of mission trips I've been on, I'm a little notorious for sleeping everywhere. And this is the first mission trip where I haven't been able to sleep. The roads were crazy. I mean, like, there are some stories from like Bolivia of hitting a speed bump going 50 miles per hour, but that was just the whole ride here. And so I was kind of forced to watch things. Like, there were people that would try to sell you things in the middle of the road. They would stand in your way and try to sell you like fried corn or vegetables. Personally, I don't think that's very profitable because I don't think anybody's going to stop for that. But it was interesting to see how much fervor they had to try to get a bus to stop for them.
Definitely a cultural experience. I love taking kids on mission trips because of the spiritual component, but I have to tell you, you step off the plane in a foreign country and you've learned chapters and chapters of what you would learn in a textbook. Just being immersed in a culture, these kids have such a wealth of knowledge now that cannot be learned in a textbook. But let's segue now to vision clinics. This year, we also, as usual, did vision clinics. We had, there was 5 days of construction, and we had 5 days of vision clinics. And we also did another one in the evening for the hotel staff. But let me ask you guys, how many of you were able to participate in the vision clinic? Yep, all of you. How many of you participated in construction? Yep, all of you. So we rotate the kids through so they have the experience of everything. They get to work in construction, they get to work in vision. Can someone share with me what vision clinic is, how should I say it, how the vision clinic flows? Amy Grace?
The first thing, I guess, is, well, we drive up. Okay, I worked there like 2-3 days, I think. And so, like, the first day we saw like all of the kids, which was super fun because we gave them all sunglasses. And then like the other day I went, there was like a whole long line of people just like waiting there. And sometimes it would be like no one there quite yet. And then like midday, like everyone was there and we're like, wow, word spreads fast. So they first get there and it's called taking their history. So pretty much like asking like what their main problem is with their eyesight. And then they go to Mr. Mitchell, who did like the auto refractor, which is pretty much like a camera that gives like a basic prescription kind of like and some like information about their eyes that can help the doctors be a little quicker. And then after that, they go to the visual acuity lines, which is like the classic like eye chart to get like how far they can see down. And then they wait for the doctor, and then they get their eyes checked and prescription given. And then they go to optical, which is like the eyeglass dispensary, which is my favorite place and probably a lot of other people's, because that's where you see the reaction to when they can see again. And yeah, it's so fun because you like put glasses on and you're like, okay, can you like see for reading or like far away? And sometimes they're like, it takes them a minute, but then they're like, oh, yeah, and like out the window, and it's so fun to see. And sometimes they're like, oh wow, I can do like my work up close again, or I've like haven't been able to see for a long time and now I can see again, like when I was younger. And some kids had like, and it was fun because there was like this one girl who had like pretty much my prescription that I have, and so I know what she's like seen
and without glasses, and then she puts them on, and like she's like, oh wow. I'm like, huh, I can relate with her because I know like it was literally like my prescription. So that was so fun. And so then after that, do you want to talk about this? The gifts? Oh, okay. After that, like this year we did something kind of different. We had like the personal care items that we would give away, and then the first day we did vision clinic was again at the school, and that's where we gave out like My Little Friends. We gave out personal care items to them too, and we also got to give out. I got to give out these light up pens, and that was just so fun to try and get them so excited. I'm like, oh look, it's a flashlight! They were just so excited about that, and it was so happy. And that's also where we gave out the crayons. And that was also really awesome to see how excited they were, because they were like, oh, I can color now. And it was awesome giving out stuff to them.
This year we added a new station, and Alicia actually helped us run that station. And that was we've done personal care items before, but this year we made it an actual station that they stopped at, and Alicia would pray with them and give them their personal care item, and it was just a nice touch to that experience. And so somebody tell me, let me hear somebody whose voice I've not heard yet. What did we do? How did we use the steps to Christ in the vision clinic?
So they could like read them with their new glasses if they couldn't read before.
So when they stopped to see the doctors, this year we had, of course, my husband, Brad, MD, but this year we got to bring another optometrist with us, Dr. Linnea Stone-Cipher. And so the doctors would give them, in the eye exam, they would give them the steps to Christ, and they would check their ability to read. So that was a gift that they took with them, but something very practical and tangible that the doctors used during the eye exam. So we put steps to Christ in the hands of 800 people, which is just fantastic, which, by the way, they do speak English in Kenya. They also speak Swahili, and they also would have their tribal language, so up to 3 languages. So the steps to Christ that we took were in English, but many people there do read and speak English.
Mom, can I add something? So about the steps to Christ, so I was working in optical, and I asked a guy, like, could he see like the steps to Christ, like the words and everything, and then he just like stared at it for a minute, and then he just gets this big smile, and he starts reading it out loud, like the whole paragraph of like steps to Christ to me. And like it was like, it made me happy, because I'm like, he's already reading it and he's like enjoying it, and then like hopefully he'll like continue reading it, but he like kept reading, and I was like, yeah, I'm so happy. And then like the translator was like get going, come on, be done. And so she like closed it for him, but he was just like, I've been wanting this book, I've heard about this book, and now I have it for free. You don't know like how like awesome this is. And so I was just like, wow, he's been like wanting this book, and we provided it, and anyway, it was cool.
That's just a huge blessing, such a huge blessing, and they appreciate so many things. They appreciate the things that we give them and value those things so much. So I know that they didn't end up in a waste heap somewhere. They are truly valued gifts. So let me give you guys some numbers. Patients. Between the vision team and the 2 eye doctors, we saw 1,266 patients. We dispensed glasses and sunglasses, 1,272 pairs of glasses and sunglasses. So we were able to really help so many people. The adults that were in the vision clinic, we've already mentioned, but the vision team consisted of Mr. Mitchell and Mrs. Fox with the autorefractor, the 2 doctors, Alicia, and then all of the lady chaperones also rotated through vision clinic along with the help of all the students. So it's really a well-oiled machine, and the kids do such a fantastic job connecting with the patients, and it's just fun to watch the kids in vision clinic. Tell us, some of you might have some stories about vision clinic that you'd like to share, maybe about people when they received their glasses, or maybe some interactions that you might have had. Does somebody have something you'd like to share about that?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but Dr. MD said he like threw a pair of glasses in, or like a few that were like, I don't know if I'll need these. They're not usually something that someone needs or whatever. And we had a guy come through, and he had like a rare prescription, and he needed those exact glasses. And he like wrote it down on one of the papers to give us the prescription, which is what we'd go in the suitcase and grab one and give it to them. And they'd be like, oh yay, and whatever. And someone found it, and they gave it to him. And I think later you found out about it, but you didn't know that we had it, and you weren't sure. And it was really cool that we had like the right prescription for someone who it was like, I don't know, it was cool.
And that generally happens on these mission trips, where the glasses, Brad and his team back here in Greenville pray about what glasses that they should take and what prescriptions they should take. And this particular person that Jotham's referring to had this very unusual, difficult prescription. And lo and behold, it's one that, unbeknownst to Brad, did get placed in the suitcase to take with us. So that's just a fantastic example. Somebody shared, do you remember about the sunglasses? Can somebody share that story?
Okay, so we had every single time that someone would go through, basically we'd give them a pair of sunglasses. And we got to like the end, and we wanted to go through our bus drivers and the hotel staff at one of the nice hotels we were staying at. And we were going through that, doing that. We didn't think we had enough sunglasses, and I think Miss Erica opened the suitcase to find a packaged little thing of the exact amount of sunglasses needed to fulfill everyone. And I think everyone had said there was like no sunglasses at the end of the day, and it was really cool to just like see like God working and like what we needed.
And there were the sunglasses. And I'm glad you said Erica's name. She's the other adult that we took with us to Vision Clinic, which was such a blessing because for years now, either Sabrina or Miss Kazia have run the optical, and so this year neither one of them were able to go, and so Erica stepped in, and she was such a huge blessing to have her on the trip as well. So other stories. Riley, I can see you've got a story.
Something I loved about Vision Clinic was I got to work with Kaylee and Amy Grace, handing out glasses and stuff. And my favorite part was giving sunglasses to little babies. And I had to fight Amy Grace over some of them. But it was just so hilarious to see the babies and their moms would just crack up. Like, they would laugh so hard over seeing their babies with sunglasses. And there was this one kid that was huge. He was like the biggest hunk I've ever seen ever. And the glasses barely fit, but the mom was just absolutely dying, and it filled my heart. And then another thing I loved about Vision Clinic was seeing all the people. Like, there were some that we didn't get to see, but we got to see a lot of them, and I got to talk with some of them. And Miss MD had to kind of tell me to get back to work sometimes because I'd wander off to the doorway and play with all the kids and stuff. But there was this one guy, he was like, "How old are you?" And I'm like, "I'm 18. And he's like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "Yeah, I am." And he's like, "What's your husband's name?" And I'm like, "I'm not married." And he's like, "How many kids do you have?" I'm like, "I don't have kids." And he's like, "What's your father's name?" I'm like, "Okay." And then he just kept asking me all day how old I was, thinking that it was eventually going to change. But the people were just so funny. And
Billy, 100 cows is what was offered. No.
So I've been doing Vision Clinic for a while now, every mission trip. And I had a really interesting experience, really funny experience. 2 really funny experiences on this mission trip, but this is one of them. So we're going through all the people, and I'm working in optical, and everybody's got the biggest smile on this face. And then this one lady walks up to me, and I hand her the book. I forgot the Swahili now. I try to ask her to read it for me and everything. And she's like, no, I speak English. I already knew she was going to be a character. She was offended by that. She was very offended by the fact that we had to give her glasses. She thought that we were insinuating she was getting too old. And she was like sticking her tongue out at me and everything, like, I don't want these things. I'm only 55. And I was like, what? It was just hilarious. I've never seen anything like it in my entire life.
Hey, Judah, you should have told her I was
for Brad. I think he said that was the first time a patient has ever stuck her tongue out at him. Oh yeah, there she is. Oh my goodness, she was sticking her tongue out, and that's her. Yeah, she was not thrilled about the fact that she had to have glasses. But in good humor. She was of course appreciative. Does anyone else have any experiences they'd like to share from Vision Clinic? Emily, and then Jenna, and then Jasmine.
So the very last day was my first and last day in Vision Clinic, and I started out in visual acuity, but then I went to optical my first time ever, and I had this little girl, and she was maybe a little bit younger than me, and I pulled out a pair of glasses. I didn't even look at them. I noticed that they were pink and they were cute. I was like, okay, these pair. And then I opened them up, and I realized they were exact same print of my first glasses ever. And it just kind of made me feel special because I was giving her something that I had once had.
That was really neat. Did you catch that? They were just like her very first pair of glasses she ever had. That's cool. Jenna.
Okay, so the day that I went to Vision Clinic, I had a pretty rough day. And because like there was a lot of people, and I was working with my dad. He was pointing at the numbers for me, and I was talking to the people and everything. And I got really mad. I don't really know why, but I was just furious. So then we go to lunch, and what happens? My soda explodes on me. And so I was like, this is it. But then I was like, I'm on a mission trip. This is all for God. So I sat there and I just prayed. And I was like, God, please just be with me. And he was. I was no longer mad. My stained pants no longer mattered. And the rest of the day was just amazing. I went to optical after lunch, and there was a ton of people. And I had this older gentleman, and I gave him his nearsighted glasses. He had two. He had one for distance and one for near. And so I gave him his nearsighted glasses, and I pointed to his book, and I was like, this is for reading. And he was looking outside, and he's like, it's not clear. I was like, it's for reading. And he's like, I can't see, it's not clear. And so then I went and I got his other glasses that were for distance, and I was like, okay, now look out. And he looks down at his book. And I was like, switch it. But he eventually figured it out. And so it was possible for me to get mad in that moment too, but praise God that I didn't. He completely took over my heart in that moment. So I will be forever grateful.
Peace that passeth all understanding. Jasmine, or was it Alex? Somebody had a comment.
Oh, I was just going to say something about what Judah said.
I couldn't hear what she said.
I was just going to say something about Judah said about like the lady thought she was like, we was like telling us needing to give her glasses, saying that she was old. I was 2 when I got my glasses.
Okay, so a little shout out here, what some of you may not realize. There's an Adventist Optometric Association called ASDAO, the Association of Seventh-day Adventist Optometrists. This association, among other things, helps provide glasses for mission trips. And so part of our glasses from this mission trip came from ASDAO, and Eastview Eye Care provided the rest of the glasses. But something that ASDAO did was donate to each of the students, raising money, $500 a student. So this association knows none of these kids, but wanted to help them on this mission trip. So we really appreciate ASDAO for that. So at the end of the workday, we would all convene back at Kimagoro. So the students in construction were already there, but the Vision Clinic would leave, and we generally, the pastor had, I think, 8 or 9 or 10 churches, and we went to 5 of them, and they were around Kimagoro. And so usually it was about 30 minutes away. So we would come back to Kimagoro, and then we would start the next part of the day, which was the week of prayer. So the week of prayer we had at the end of each workday, and somebody tell me, let's see, who have I not heard much from? Lydia, I've not heard much from you. Tell us, Lydia, what we did at week of prayer. First off, how many teams were we in? 6.
6.
That's
Yeah.
right. We were in 6 teams. Okay. And so the school kids, there were 298 school kids. 298. Enrollment has gone up. We were first told 233, and so we prepared for just a few more than that. And then I heard there were more, and so we prepared for more. And then I heard there were 298, and so then we prepared for even more. And some of the ladies at construction on that first day, thank you, ladies, cut more crafts so we would have enough crafts. But what did we do during week of prayer, Lydia?
Well, first of all, we had like a song service, and all of the guitarists would be split up, and we'd all sing different songs. And then we would have a health talk, and then nature nugget, and then we would have a children's story. And then we would do like a craft, and yeah.
So raise your hand if, okay, I'm going to ask you what you guys did. Raise your hand if you participated in song service. That's pretty much all of you. Raise your hand if you actually brought a guitar and you led out in song service with your guitar. Thank you. Raise your hand if you did health talks. Raise your hand if you did the nature nugget. Raise your hand if you did the Bible story. Now, I have to tell you, it is so fun watching these kids. My group, I didn't see all the kids because I was with my group. But let me tell you, we have some real public speakers in our midst. And it has come to my attention that Tucker is an amazing public speaker. Even though he has not said much tonight, I need you to know that Tucker can tell a really mean nature nugget. He really was engaging with the kids. And Jotham got right in there with his health talk and did a great job. And I can brag on all the kids. Those just happened to be the kids in my group. And so every night we would work with these kids, and they were divided in their age levels. And I want, does anyone have something that they would like to share from that experience, the week of prayer experience? Abigail, somebody pass a mic to Abigail.
So I guess this wasn't, we also did a craft after like the Bible story, and the kids that was their favorite part. They never really ever got to do crafts because they didn't have craft supplies at the school, so that was their favorite part, I think, of the entire, like for our class anyways. And they just like, as soon as you tell them you're having a craft, their faces just like light up. And they had a lot of fun with the googly eyes we brought them. I couldn't figure out how to stick them on, so we had to help them. But they had a lot of fun with that. And one of the kids she thought it was fun to like take the googly eyes off and then tell me that she didn't have any. So, but it was okay. We had fun together. And we also, after VBS, a group of girls came up to me. I had talked to them and just told them hello and just like asked them how they're doing after one of the vision clinics for the school. And they came up to me and they're like, Abigail, Abigail. And every other girl there is named Abigail, by the way. So I don't know if they're talking to me or not. And so they came up to me and they said, we have a gift for you. I was like, okay. And they were like, they said, open it. They handed me this envelope that was like really brightly colored. They had colored it with the crayons we had given them, which I thought was really touching to me. And I opened it and they said, it's you. And it was this carefully drawn replica of me. And I thought that was really sweet. But yeah, it was, I couldn't give them something back, which was really sad to me, because if you give them something, then the whole school wants something. So. But it was really a blessing for their generosity and like having that experience. So,
does someone else have something they'd like to share from Week of Prayer? So, let me ask you guys, juniors and seniors, raise your hand nice and high. How many of you? Hold on. How many of you prepared to preach a sermon in Kenya? Raise your hand if you prepared to preach a sermon in Kenya. Okay, raise your hand if you actually preached in Kenya. Okay, there were just 3. So, Jarrett, tell me what happened with that. Tell me why we didn't end up preaching, except a couple of you.
So, our plan was every night we would have a preacher. Judah and Troy were going to preach on the Sabbath, so they were good. But the rest of us, while we were doing VBS, there was going to have a group of adults come to the school, and we would preach to them. I was the first sermon, so I was pretty nervous. I'd never done this before. And we get there, done with construction, everybody's starting VBS, and there's no adults. Turns out that the communication that there was going to be a sermon every night was not very clear, and nobody showed up. So the first day, I talked to Mr. Mitchell about it. He's like, it's all good. We'll just do 2 sermons tomorrow. And nobody showed up the next day either. Every single day, we had no adults preach at all, except for Judah. He preached on the first Sabbath at the school at church, and some adults had stayed afterwards, about 50, and so they wanted to hear more. And so I had an opportunity to preach to them.
And I was really excited for Jarrett because this is the first time he got to preach, and he was so excited to be able to do it. So Jarrett, tell me, what was it like to preach for your first time?
Well, I've given like little talks before, 5-10 minute stuff, but never 30 minutes. I put my whole soul into that sermon, and I've never done that before. And it's kind of fun. That's probably the only writing assignment that I would enjoy doing every single day. I mean, I love writing assignments, Miss MD.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to take that. But anyway, I'll take it as a positive experience because these kids all the juniors and seniors wrote a sermon, whether they were planning to preach it or not. And so all of them wrote a sermon, and the ones that were going to preach in Kenya practiced it. So while I didn't hear his sermon that night, I did hear it in the classroom, and it was a powerful, powerful sermon. And I was just so thankful that he could share that message with the people at Kenya. So I was excited for that opportunity. Now, Judah, you preached the first Sabbath, and Judah actually got to write 2 sermons because the first sermon that he wrote was a lovely sermon, but not geared for a younger age set. So Judah had to rewrite his sermon. And Judah, tell us about your experience of preaching there at Kimagoro School.
Yeah, so when I was first writing my sermon, I thought I was going to be preaching to like a church of adults, which was a massive misunderstanding on my part. And so I rewrote the sermon. I was kind of frustrated by it, to be honest, but I ended up actually really enjoying what I had been given. I was a little bit nervous to preach compared to other mission trips that I've talked on, just because we were going to a place like Kenya. I've only ever been to countries where they speak Spanish, and that's a little bit more familiar to me. But going to a place where they speak Swahili and other African dialects was a little intimidating, to be honest. But my translator was that guy right there.
Oh yeah, that's you preaching.
Yeah, that's me preaching right there, actually. And he was a wonderful translator. He was, it was great. We had a mixture of the kids. The kids were very interactive with all the questions I had. The adults were very interactive. I pray that they listened and got something from it. I really felt empowered by the Holy Spirit during preaching the sermon. I just felt like I could really let go and just say what the Holy Spirit was leading me to say. And I pray that anything I say might have been able to plant a seed in just one of those kids' hearts. There's me preaching again the same day. But it was just a wonderful experience, and I just praise the Lord for such a great opportunity.
You know, the kids, Judah and Troy, preached such powerful, heartfelt sermons. I just wish that you guys could have heard them because it was so evident that the Holy Spirit was using them to present a powerful message to the people there. And it was just a really moving experience. Now, one more thought about the lack of sermons. Kaylee and Emmy Grace, I want you guys to speak to this, especially Kaylee. Kaylee was supposed to preach. The last night was her night that she was supposed to preach. But because she didn't preach, talk to us about what happened that last evening, Kaylee and Emmy Grace.
Yeah, so I was writing my sermon, and I was going to be the last day, and I was going to make a baptismal appeal for the adults. And it was a huge effort of prayer, and like I was working with God on it a lot, and I was so excited to preach it and give a baptismal appeal. And then I was pretty disappointed when I found out we weren't going to be able to preach, or I wasn't going to be able to preach. But it also opened up a door because that last day I was going to be with the adults and not with my week of prayer group. And I was telling the Bible stories, so I was going to miss that last day if I had preached. But God, I guess he had a different plan, and I'm so happy he did. So I was with my week of prayer group, and our last Bible story was John the Baptist, and it talked about Jesus being baptized. And I was looking at the script, and the last sentence was like, would you like to be baptized? And I'm like, oh, maybe here's a little opportunity. So I talked to Mrs. MD. I'm like, hey, can we make a baptismal appeal? And another thing is, my group was the 7th and 8th graders. And at first, I'm like, the first day we got our groups to sign, I'm like, Mrs. MD knows I love like the little kids. I can't believe she gave me 7 and 8. But I was also so excited because it was new, and I knew God had something planned. And I'm so happy that he did. Because, Emmy Grace and I, we were going to make baptismal appeals for our week of prayer classes. So we got together and we prayed a lot because it was scary. It's scary giving up, like, control to God and having him fill you and ask people to be baptized. Like, they could just not react at all. So it was scary, like, giving up control, but we did. And I wrote out this whole, like, all these notes on the back of my notes. And honestly, as soon as I started, like, they just kind of left, and God just took over. And it was just such a blessing because I don't really remember all the things I said, but I just remember looking at them all in their faces and just being like, God wants you so much. And I just pray that that's what sticks with them. And so then I asked them the question, I'm like, is there anyone that wants to be baptized? And then there's that awkward moment of, like, nothing happening. But then the first person stands up, and it's just like, I started to cry, and I just kept crying, and it was just like such a blessing. I hugged her, and I'm like, God bless you so much. And it only takes really one person, and you know that first person is so genuine, and like, you know that they really want to give their heart to Jesus. And after that one person, it just like, it kept coming, and it was such a blessing. There was like over 30 kids that just like kept coming up. Like, in my week of prayer class was pretty big, and there was only like probably 6 or 7 left at the end. And we ended singing I Have Decided to Follow Jesus, and actually taught it to us in Swahili too. And it was the most beautiful moment because I told them all, I'm like, guys, heaven is rejoicing so much over all of you. And it was just it was such a blessing. That was definitely the most, I don't know, there's no feeling that hails any comparison to the feeling of being totally used by God in the moment. So that's why I was just crying so much, because I was just surrounded by all these kids who I'd spent the whole week with who were deciding to give their life to Jesus. So I just want you all to please keep them in your prayers and pray that they keep making this decision to follow Jesus every day and that they act on that decision they made that day. So, yeah, and Amy Grace has this.
So my group was the 5th and 6th grade group. And so all week, I wasn't sure how much English they understood because we didn't have a translator, because supposedly in 5th grade they know enough English to not need one. So the younger grades all had translators, and so I was kind of worried how much they would understand what I was like talking about. And so I was told to give a baptismal appeal, which made me very nervous because I have never done anything like that before. And so even though it's just kids and I love kids, it was like, this is like kind of serious. Like, this is like, I remember when I like went up on an altar call, and it was like a super special moment, but it's like scary getting up in front of a lot of people. And so I was just praying a lot, and I was like, I have no clue what I'm gonna say, and I'm like, I don't know if they're gonna understand me. And so we were praying together, and then I was praying on my own. I was like, God, just like Google Translate what like I'm saying into like their brains so they know what I'm talking about, and this is like baptism. And so I was telling the story of John the Baptist and looking ahead and like kind of the script, and it was like I saw the word baptized. I was like, oh no, it's coming up. And so I kind of like was getting nervous. And so then I was going through all of like the characters we had talked about that week, and I was like, if you want to have the braveness like David and da-da-da-da-da. And then I was like, and John the Baptist and Jesus led an example to be baptized. And I was like, oh no. And then Marcus started playing I've Decided on his guitar, and I was like, music, kind of makes you emotional. And so I was like, oh, it's here. And so I start like
appealing for them to like come up, and I was like, would any of you like to be baptized? And like a couple raised their hand. I was like, oh, they want to be. So I was like, well, come up here if you like want to and join me. And then like they just start like coming up, and I was like overwhelmed, because I was so nervous there wouldn't be a response. And then like these kids that we'd been playing with like all week long were starting to like come up, and not all of them came, but in God's time, that's okay. And so I think 29 ended up coming up out of the group, which was a lot of them. I think only like 10 didn't. But it was so awesome, because I was like, these are the kids that we just met like a week ago. We've been playing with, teaching them these stories that some of them didn't even know about, that I've known since I was like super little. And then I just like started thinking, and I was like, you know, God is the one that created them. God already knows them by name and knows everything about them just as much as he knows like all of us here. And so then I started like picturing them like in heaven someday, you know, sitting on Jesus's lap instead of mine, and like playing with like God and like the kids at GAA too. And I was like, all of us are going to be like a big happy family in heaven. And now they're choosing to like decide to follow Jesus, and like hopefully for the rest of their lives. So it's just like a very emotional and spiritually uplifting moment of like the whole trip for sure. So
we had the opportunity to worship the second Sabbath at a Maasai tribe in a one-day church. And that was a really neat experience. Another experience that we had on the first Sabbath, every time we would go to Kimagoro, we passed along the way. There was on the roadside a sign that said Seventh-day Adventist Church. And we looked, and all that was there were some sticks that were like, it was like a framework with no roof. And so I was like, if they are there Sabbath, I want to stop. And so we came through on Sabbath, and there was that tiny little congregation out on a hillside. And honestly, folks, you could not have, even though their structure was bare minimum, you can't imagine a more beautiful setting for a church. And we were able to, and I want us to talk briefly about music, because the kids brought some of the kids brought instruments, and everybody brought their voices, and we were able to share. Kaylee, I want you to speak to this, because you were one of the ones that we used time and time again for a particular song. Can you share with us what we did at that church and what we did at other places as well?
So at every church that we went to, we would play and sing Lift Up the Trumpet. So it would be the trumpets, so Coach, Mr. Les Marcus, and I, and we would play the trumpet, and we'd have this like cool little intro and a descant at the end while everyone else sung Lift Up the Trumpet. And it was always so amazing, because every single time you could just feel the angels singing with us, and it was incredible.
I will never forget, as long as I live, well, maybe I will, but for right now, I'm saying I will never forget the most amazing experience at that little tiny church that was just a stop, that we didn't even know the people. We just stopped there, and just a handful of people, and all of our kids and chaperones get up front. And then the trumpets are playing, and there's this big, beautiful blue sky in the background, and these beautiful green hills in the background, and they're singing Lift Up the Trumpet. That is an incomparable experience that I cannot tell you how amazing that was. And I think, if nothing else, the kids learned from this trip that music is so valuable to make seemingly awkward situations into these beautiful, rich experiences. I mean, here we are, a band of strangers stopping at their church and piling out of 3 buses, and like, here we are. But yet, they were so excited, and we had something to offer them. And music does that. And so a special huge thanks to Coach and Miss Ann for preparing the kids for experiences like this. I mean, time and time again, we'd be like, okay, kids, sing something. And they would, or play something, and they would. And so we were able to have these experiences with music. Wherever we went, we were able to share. We had a concert, 2 concerts actually at Kimagoro. The first one we had, and the principal wanted us to have a second one because not all the kids were there to hear the first one. And he wanted all the kids to be able to experience that. And also he's trying to recruit Ann to move over there for 6 months to do the music program. I don't know what Les is going to say about that, however. So anyhow, and so we also did a concert at Maxwell Academy. Some of you have heard of Maxwell Academy. That's where Pastor Kent, our pastor, used to be a missionary at Maxwell Academy. And that was a really fantastic experience to share our music there as well. But I think the most special times for me were when the music was impromptu, just like getting off the bus at a church and saying, hey, we've got a song for you. It was really a beautiful experience. How many of you, raise your hand if you actually brought a musical instrument to play, not a guitar as well, either guitar or one of the instruments that was with Coach. So a lot of the kids brought their instruments, and so we just had a really rich time sharing the things that they have learned and practiced here at GAA. Oh, yes, that was fun. Somebody share with me about, Lily Beth, yes, please, share about that song.
So the song is called Wana Baraka, and it's in Swahili. And so the words translated are, they have blessings, those who pray. It goes on like that. I was thinking of a specific time. Is that okay? So our last Sabbath there, we were at the Messiah Church, and it had to have a translator because a lot of the people there didn't speak English. And we went up and we sang Wana Baraka for them. And they smiled because they're like, oh, it's in our language. But the thing that was most impactful to me was that I saw a bunch of people like clapping along, and then they started singing with us like they knew it. And it was so exciting to praise God with people that I'm probably never going to see again and that I wasn't able to speak to any other way. And it was such a blessing.
Music has a way of doing that, and that was a really special component of our trip. I want to share with you guys about Mr. Paul. Somebody tell them who Mr. Paul is. Jasmine?
He is the man that donated the land for the school.
And how old? Do you remember how old Mr. Paul is?
112.
112. This is the oldest man that probably most of us have ever met or will meet. And Mr. Paul is an amazing guy. To me, he was like a superstar, rock star, because I had seen him in some of the Maranatha videos about Kimagoro, and I wanted to meet this guy. And he had shown up on campus one day, and I didn't get to meet him, and I was so disappointed, and then he came another day. So I was really excited to meet Mr. Paul, 112 years old. And I think what was so amazingly impactful was that he was able to see, he had prayed for this, and he is actually able to see his gift grow and grow. Now I'm going to give you a quick backstory about this, and I hope I don't botch the story. I wish the Crutchers were here to tell the story themselves, but they're still in Kenya. The Crutchers used to live there, of course, and what you may or may not know is Susan's grandfather, she comes from a line of missionaries. Her grandfather was a missionary in Africa. Her dad and mom were missionaries in Africa. She grew up in Africa as a missionary kid. Then she and her husband went back. Anyhow, so this is so neat. Back in the 40s, I think it's the 40s, like I say, forgive me if I don't get every detail correct, but this is my understanding of the story. Her grandfather was a missionary there in Kenya. He was one of 3 at a certain location. Mr. Paul had learned about the Adventist truth, and he had gone to this mission station, and he actually met Susan's grandfather. And the grandfather and the other 2 men counseled him and discipled him and helped him to grow in his faith. And so they challenged him. And this is the amazing thing. They challenged him. Okay, now you have this truth. What are you going to do with it? And he came back and he donated. He's a wealthy Kenyan there. He donated his land for a church. Years later, he donated his land for the school. And here is the influence of one man, Mr. Paul, and this huge schooling Adventist community has grown up and around Kimagoro that he donated the land for, because back in the 40s, Susan Crutcher's grandfather said, "What are you going to do with your faith now?" Isn't that incredible? And I mean, to think, imagine if her grandfather could like see into the future and knew that his granddaughter would be sitting by Mr. Paul in 2024 having her picture taken with him. I mean, that's just crazy how those things work out. But that was a really neat thing for the Crutchers. Yes, I'd love for you to say something.
I think we should just make this clear. When you see a 112-year-old man in your head, he's like, old guy, right? Mr. Paul, the first time I met him, he walked through the gates. He walks up this great hill and walks through the gates. And so I see this old Kenyan guy with these big earlobes, because he had gauges in his ears, like a lot of older Kenyan people do. But he's walking through, he's dancing with his cane and everything. And I walk up to this guy, and I'm like, hello, hello, hello. This guy doesn't speak English. He starts talking to me really fast and everything in Swahili. I can tell he's saying something important. I don't know what he's saying. But I get one of the guys for construction to come over, and he's just like, this is the guy who donated the land and everything. He just wants to say hi to you guys. And after I was talking to Miss MD, and I was like, Miss MD, this old guy came up, and he was just so vibrant and everything. He was dancing and everything and so happy. And I was like, they said it was the guy who donated the land. And I don't think you believed me, because you were like, oh, it must be one of his sons. Because some guy that old's not going to be, jumping around and everything. But it's true. This guy was just so vibrant. And I think it impacted me because it shows that this guy donated everything, a lot of the land that he had, and gave away everything. And that brought him so much joy. And Dr. Brad had a similar experience when we went to another school, and I think we'll probably talk about that later. It just showed me how the gift of giving is so impactful to a person. And seeing the fruits of your labor is so impactful to a person. Even at 112, when your body is failing you, it just fills you with the joy of the Holy Spirit. And that was really impactful.
Alec?
Something else that I thought was really cool was I heard from somebody that not only was he 112 and had done all of this great stuff, but he had more in mind to do that he wanted to see get done. I mean, it was just, it's like, I don't know. For me personally, if I was 112, I don't think I could be looking toward the future. I don't know how this guy was doing it, but I think that's why he's alive, honestly.
He had more goals. He did. There's so many more stories that we can tell, and I know we need to start wrapping it up, but there were so many neat experiences with Pathfinders. I know Mrs. Elliott had some really great experiences with being able to connect there with the Pathfinders. It was time for us to say goodbye the last day at Kimagoro, and they had a fantastic program for us, and they gave us all these blankets, which, by the way, one of the students brought this to school, has not claimed it. If you're missing one, you need to let me know. Otherwise, it's going to go home with me, and I'm going to make a pillow out of it. So anyhow, if it's yours, please claim it. But anyhow, we also, in addition to the really amazing things that we did there at Kimagoro and in the community, whether it be construction, the witness that we had was amazing. Somebody tell briefly about driving through the communities, and what did the people start to do to us when they saw our bus go by? Do you remember? See what Judah's doing? They would do this. They knew that we were there to do vision clinics. And how they knew this, I don't know. But Pastor Kent says there are no secrets in Kenya. So maybe that was it. But we would drive by communities and they would start doing this. And it was so neat. And one of the neat things, I want to give a little plug for the vision clinics. And one of the things that the vision clinics does is it brings community people into the church, people that otherwise have never set foot in a church or Seventh-day Adventist church before, come into the church. hundreds of people in a day might come through, and they're shown love, they're given an eye exam, and they're given glasses or sunglasses or a personal care item or a Steps to Christ book or a little friend if they're a child, or stuffed animals. We would take stuffed animals. Mary Lou, thank you for the stuffed animals that you collect for us, and we would pass these out to the little children, and they were shown such love, and it is such a testimony to the power of God's love and His goodness when they have this positive experience going into a Christian church. So I think that's the power of the Vision Clinic. We didn't go just to help people see better, but we went to help them see Jesus better. We got to do a lot of really cool, fun things too, I'm not gonna lie. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass the microphone down, and everybody's gonna say the favorite thing that you saw on an excursion. We got to go on some safaris, and we saw amazing animals, and I want you kids to think about the favorite thing that you saw, and then just pass the mic down and tell your favorite animal that you saw on the safari. That's like asking maybe which child is your favorite, which I don't have one. Okay, anyway.
So, funny story. This isn't my favorite animal, but it's definitely the most interesting one I saw. I saw this beautiful caterpillar. One day we were eating lunch in the middle of the safari, and I decided to sit in the grass. And I see this little cute caterpillar just like a foot away from me, and I'm like, oh, he's cute, and I continued to eat my lunch. So about 15 minutes later, Jackson's like, Riley, do not move. And I'm like, okay. So he tries to kick this caterpillar off my back, and instead of kicking it off my back, he kicks it into my back a little bit. So I'm like, okay, whatever, it's off now, I'm fine. So about 5 minutes later, I feel an itching and burning sensation in my back. I'm like, what is happening? So I look at it, and I see like spines all in my back, like prickly little caterpillar spots in my back. And there were Mr. Les and a whole handful of people just sat there carefully picking spines out of my back for the longest time. And I was very late today because I put that shirt on after washing it, and then I get to church and I'm like, my back is itching. And I'm like, what is happening? I literally washed this shirt, and then I look at my back, in the same exact spot where the caterpillar stung me in Kenya, apparently it didn't come out in the wash. So I have been stung by caterpillar from Kenya in America. So
the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Riley.
So my favorite animal was ironically the lions, and you would not believe how close we got to these lions. They were literally like arm's length from the land cruisers we were in. It was awesome. There was like a whole bunch of female lions with their cubs and all that, like right out next to us. It was so cool.
So mine was the elephants, and we got like really close to a lot of the elephants on the safari. Like some of them even crossed the road while we were there. But also we went to an elephant orphanage, and I got to pet a baby elephant.
Personally, one of my favorite things was the hippos, and it was really cool because it's rare to see them out in the grassland, like grazing and stuff, because that's more of a nighttime thing. But we went on an earlier morning safari, and we saw one out in the grass, and it was grazing, but a car got too close to it, so it started to run, and they're actually quite fast, surprisingly. But he ran, and like you could see him like going into the water and everything, and it was a really cool experience. It's probably one of my favorite things.
So I also really liked the elephants. On our second day of the safari, we actually like drove kind of through a herd of elephants, and there were probably around 18 in that herd, and it was all mothers with their little calves, and there was a big bull male. But one of the calves, the tour guide said was no more than 2 days old, and it was so tiny and it was so cute. And so we kind of just sat there watching the elephants for a little while, and then the male bull like started going across the road. And so all of them started following us. And one of the mothers saw that our car was like pretty close to them. We were on the road and they were trying to cross the road. And she trumpeted right at us. And it was kind of scary, but it was also really, really cool. I like to joke around that the mother elephant saw the trumpet players and Mr. Les and I and decided to give us a run for our money.
So my favorite thing was probably, well, okay, this is definitely the most interesting thing I saw, was we were in our Land Cruiser, and it was me and my parents, and then Kaylee and her mom, and we're driving on the road, and we're not the first ones, but we're like far enough away where like the other Land Cruiser is like long gone, and we see this warthog run across the road, and like 2 feet behind it, a lioness is running after. We're like, oh no. But it was honestly really exciting because the tour guide had literally just said that it's extremely rare for lions to hunt during the day. They're more nocturnal, and it doesn't happen very often. So to see that was really cool. And then 5 other lionesses just kind of follow along, and they all go across the road, and we hear the warthog, and then we don't hear the warthog. And we're like, oh, well, we know what happened there. But it was very interesting to see something that they had literally just said was very rare, and it was very exciting.
Oh man, I don't know. My favorite part is really hard because I love all the animals. It was really cool to see all of them. I love the elephants, but like seeing like the tiny one was really sweet. But yeah, I don't know. I like them all.
Even before we left, I wanted to see a giraffe so bad. And on our first safari, I was like kind of sad because I didn't get to see one up close. We saw them in the distance, but the next day was my birthday, so I was like, okay, if anything happens, I want to see a giraffe on my birthday. And so we were driving, and there was a parallel road, and I saw this giraffe that was like so close to the road. So our driver literally did a U-turn and like did 60 miles an hour, or I should say kilometers per hour, whatever, and around to see it just so I could see it. And it was really nice. So like, yeah.
Okay, I decided what my favorite animal was. So we like walked out of our hotel, like it wasn't really a hotel, it was like a hut we were staying in. And we walked out one morning on the morning we were leaving, and we walked down the walkway, and there were zebras everywhere. Like, I don't know, was it not the morning we left? Anyways, it was one of the mornings, and it was so cool to just like see them like not in a vehicle, like you're just standing there, and you're just like, I felt like such a part of Africa at that moment in time. Like, I don't know, it's really cool. That was my favorite part.
A baby rhino. They didn't have a horn. It was just a little nub. And it was the greatest thing ever. And I feel like the belly was the same size as an adult rhino. It was fat. It was incredible.
Probably the male lions, like especially, like I really want to see one, but then we were driving around, and then we came to a lion. It was just sitting there with like his kill right next to it, and I thought that was really cool.
I would have to say it was really hard to pick a favorite animal, but I would have to say the giraffe was pretty cool because they got so close, and we would stop, and they would just stare at us, and it was so cool.
My favorite animal would have to probably be either the elephants or the baby rhino, because he was just so cute, and he was by himself because the other rhino was like blind, and they don't bring him out. So that was probably my favorite animal that we saw. But the most interesting thing that I saw was these little kids, and they're just smiling like it's just the greatest day in the world. So yeah.
On our first day of safari, we were going down the road, and we saw some hippos in the water. So our driver turns off the car, puts it in park, whatever, and we're sitting there just watching them. And the driver just finishes telling us how they can run 40 kilometers an hour on land and 70 kilometers in the water. And the hippo just comes like charging out of the water directly at us. Thankfully, it didn't go too far, but my mom started like screaming for us to go. She got super scared.
So mine has kind of like a backstory behind it. So I had asked Miss MD and several other people here on this trip and like family members that to pray for me to see a cheetah in the wild, because ever since I was little, I've always loved cheetahs. They're my favorite animal, and I always want to see one in the wild. And so we're going on our first day of the safari, and like praying the whole time, and it was like only a half day basically, and we didn't see anything. And the second day, we woke up and we're going on the safari for the whole entire day. And I'm like, okay, hopefully this is the day. And I was like praying, they were praying, whatever. And we go, and we end up getting stuck in mud. And the drivers kept getting stuck like single file. So like one would get stuck, and the other one would push them out, and they'd go, and then the next one would get stuck because they pushed the other one out, and then the next one did the exact same thing. It was just a horrible chain reaction. But that took around 2 hours, a little bit less than that. And after that was done, we went in this like Y. And most of the buses, we had eight Land Cruisers. Most of them went to the left side, and ours, and I think it's like Santi's, went to the right side. And we're driving by, and we were like the last one in those 2 Land Cruisers. Santi goes by, and I see him like doing like this. He was like doing like this, and I'm like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And I thought he was like thinking he was a lion or something. I don't know what it was. And I'm like, what is it? What is it? And then I hear someone say cheetah, and I just light up. I go from one side of the bus to the other side with like a camera, and I'm like looking. Anyway, we drive by, and I see like the head of the cheetah, and I see it licking something, but I couldn't tell what it was. And so we go, and I asked our bus driver, can I we please go back? I want to like see this, and I want to it's like my dream. And he ends up backing up like later, and I'm using binoculars, and I end up seeing like a little cheetah just like sitting there like looking around. So I saw it was like a mom and a little cheetah, and probably it was like licking like grooming the cheetah. And that was the coolest thing for me, and like very powerful. That was my dream. It's awesome.
A cool animal that we got to see was hyena. Just one.
I really liked the lions. It was cool to see those.
All the animals was cool, but the elephants were pretty cool. And we saw this, it's kind of like a big cow, but it has long horn. Elon, it has big horns on it. But anyway, this thing can jump over our Land Cruiser. It's pretty cool. It's really heavy.
Mine were the male lions. So I'm kind of a cat person. No offense to dog people, but cats are superior. And so I was always wanting to see a male lion. And so we saw some lionesses. And I was like, oh, they're so pretty, but I really want to see a male lion. And so we're like driving in the safari, and there's like a circle of the safari vehicles, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what's there. And so I'm looking, and there's like this carcass just like laying there of this like, I don't know what it was. It was like half gone. Cape Buffalo. Okay. Anyway, it was really disgusting. And so I was like, why are people taking pictures? I was like, whatever. And then I look closer, and there's a male lion. And then it gets up and like stretches and stuff. I'm like, oh, I just want to like go hug it, because it's like a huge cat. And everyone's like, you're gonna get mauled. But someday in heaven, I will hug on lions, because they're like a huge house cat. So that was super fun. And yeah, I love lions now.
Very much in contrast to that, I loved all the dainty little gazelles that were just everywhere, just living their best life for now, and they were just chilling, and I loved all of them. And also loved the zebras. They were just so adorable.
It's pretty hard to choose. I mean, elephants are pretty cool. We got to see them up close a lot. Lions, we got really blessed up with the lions. We got to see them close like a lot. There was like 2 lions like sleeping right in the middle by the tree, and we were just like driving in circles around them. It was kind of cool. And then of course saw them by the prey, so that was nice.
I don't know if it's my favorite, because I can't really pick a favorite, but one that I didn't know existed, and then I went there, and now I'm a huge fan of it, is the eland thing. It's like this thing, it's like a giant cow deer thing that's like 1,200 kilos and jumps like 8 feet in the air. And I kind of see why like women live longer than men now, because I just had the urge to get out and try to ride it or something. Like, it was really epic. And at the Maasai tribe, they had like this shofar looking thing, but it was an eland horn, and the guy let me play it, and I played it. It was like, whoa, so cool. I'm a big fan of the eland now.
So okay, so on our excursions, we got to do a lot of really neat things. We also went to some of you have heard of this before, the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. That's where we saw, it was an orphanage for baby elephants and the baby rhinos. We went to an ostrich farm. How many of you got to ride an ostrich? Okay, some of you rode an ostrich. That was kind of amazing. We also did something really neat. Not everyone did this. Most people went back to the hotel, but a few of us went to Kajiado Rescue School, and you've probably heard the Marsas talk about this before, and it is it rescues Maasai girls from childhood marriage. And it's an amazing place, and Maranatha has done a lot of work there, and so that was a really special time for us as well. Riley, I want you to tell real quick. For some reason, this story touches me. I don't know why. I just love this story. Briefly tell us about why you have a new name.
Well, we were leaving the church, and this little girl just sits there and waits for me to recognize her. And of course, there's like 50 other kids around me waiting for me to recognize them. But there's this one girl in specific looking up at me, and I give her a fist bump and kind of move on because we have a schedule. And I try to walk out of the church, and she follows me, and I'm like, well, okay, it's normal. So I just keep walking out to the bus, and then she grabs my hand, and I'm like, okay, I'll just roll with it, keep walking.
Riley is a baby magnet and a child magnet and an animal magnet. But anyway, go ahead.
Anyways, she just kept holding my hand, and then she's like, hey, what's your name? And I'm like, my name is Riley. And she's like, well, my name is Nellie. I'm like, oh, all right, it's nice to meet you. And so we just keep walking and making small talk. And then before I leave, she looks up at me, and she's like, today your name is Lovely. And it was just the sweetest thing ever. And she actually recognized me throughout the week and called me Lovely. So, yeah.
I just thought that was a sweet story. In conclusion, does anyone have something that they would like to share that you saw as God really moving in this trip? Maybe a spiritually impactful moment, or you saw God working, or a lesson that you learned. Before we close tonight, I want to give you an opportunity to end on a spiritual thought. Does someone have something that they would like to share that really impacted them?
So Jackson's not here tonight, but I shared a really impactful moment with Jackson. So at the final time when we were at the Maasai tribe to preach, we just finished, and everybody was kind of congregating, and so there was this rock out in the distance. And so me and Jackson walked up when we climbed this rock, and it was just us. And no one's mentioned it, but I don't know if it's just me that thinks it's just so beautiful. They had this migration of white butterflies moving through Kenya when we were there. So there was this beautiful white thing of butterflies at all times, like cotton flying through the air almost. And so we got up on this rock, and I started to pray. And I was just starting to think about the whole trip. We were about to go back and everything. And it really just struck me how much God loves us. He gave us the opportunity. He gave us Miss Cindy and Dr. Brad, who give us these opportunities. He gives the people here the loving spirit. And just without God and without the providence that he'd have for us, none of us would be here today. And that's really set in looking at that beautiful nature with all those white butterflies. And it filled me with peace. And ever since I've been back, every time I've had a stressful moment, because school's been stressful lately, to be completely honest, I just think back at sitting on that rock and feeling that peace, feeling that communion with God. And I think it's something I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Thank you. Does someone else have something they'd like to share?
Just everywhere we went and every group of people we saw, like, I just remember going to the school for the first time and like leaving the school, just like looking back and being like, every place I left, all I could think of was just God bless these people and God bless this place, because every place just blessed me so much, and I saw the joy and love that the people had for us and for God and for each other, and I just wanted God to, like, I just prayed that God would just pour out his blessings on those people and on us, and it was just amazing to see how many blessings we can look back on this trip and count, because like at my prayer group yesterday, I was sharing a song about like counting your blessings and like how we can't even add them all up no matter how hard we try. And I think of like, I look at all these pictures that we have from Kenya of me and like these groups of like innumerable amounts of kids, and I just like, I think there's one blessing, there's two blessings, there's three blessings. Like each one of these kids blessed me so much, and I know they blessed like all of us so much, and I just can't wait to be with them in heaven again. And I loved telling them that. I'm like, guys, we're gonna see you again in heaven. And I just, oh, it was such a blessing. Kenya was unlike any other trip I've been on. It's life-changing for I think all of us, and I just pray that one day God calls us back there maybe, but if not, I pray that we see them all again in heaven.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share anything? I think that most of these kids can agree that Kenya, like Kaylee stated, is life-changing. It is like no other mission trip that you'll go on. All mission trips are very special, and each one near and dear to my heart, but there's something special about Africa. And I think in reading through what some of the kids have written about their experience, I think something that kind of resonates with all of the students is this idea that the kids there have so very little, but they have found such joy. And their joy is found in their friendship with Jesus Christ. And I think that made a really big impression on the students. Before we close, I want to give a special thank you to a couple of people and institutions. First off, I want to thank Maranatha. They're not watching, but we had an amazing team over there. Kotesh, Anu, Emmanuel, Samuel, the fantastic bus drivers. Maranatha is such a joy to work with. If any of you ever want to go on a mission trip, I would highly recommend you checking out the Maranatha website and signing up for one of their mission trips, because while ours is a closed mission trip to just the GAA students, they have many open mission trips that you can be a part of, and I would highly encourage you to be a part of that. They are a well-oiled machine, and you will not be disappointed if you go on a Maranatha mission trip. I've already thanked Asdeo for their contributions, financial, and many of the glasses that they provided for the trip. I'd like to thank my husband, who, bless his heart, he's my helper, my sounding board, organizer of the vision clinics, and just putting up with all the time that is invested on my end into this. So, and then Dr. John Shaw, he gave each child $50 in spending cash because he believes that every kid needs to come home with a souvenir, and I just think that that's precious. I'd like to thank all the generous donors. I know that you guys have put forth so much money so these kids could have this experience. And so thank you to our donors and our faithful prayer partners. We could not have this experience without the prayers and the financial blessings that our church families and community members and family members have poured out on this. I'd like to thank Mr. N and the school board, who graciously say yes to experiences like this and support opportunities for our kids. You've heard their testimonies. This is amazing what these kids have been able to experience. And so just a huge thank you to the school board and to our principal who support these life-changing experiences. I'd like to thank my chaperones. If you were a chaperone on this trip, would you please stand right now? I had 21 chaperones and 24 students, so we were very well chaperoned. It was such a blessing. I think every year, this is my dream team, and then a new year comes along, and I'm like, this is my dream team. And so we were just so blessed to have each one of these people, and they all added such a special element. Big thanks to Dr. Kloss. It is just puts my mind at peace to have a medical doctor on the trip, and I know that he was helpful in many situations, so big thank you to him as well. But all of you were so helpful and loved on those kids, and just were amazing chaperones. And one chaperone, Jennifer, this is her 4th mission trip. So she's been on all 4 of the mission trips that we've done in the past year. So that's exciting to have her on all 4. And we're not going to think about, next year. But we're just excited that her sweet, loving, kind presence has been with us for 4 years. She has been such a huge blessing, and that loving mom to the kids who don't have a mom on the trip. And lastly, just a huge thank you to God, who makes this possible for our kids. God provides the way. He provides the finances. He keeps us safe. He changes hearts. He renews lives, and we're just so blessed to go to a school that encourages and supports our kids learning about God and providing opportunities like this. So I'd like to thank each one of you for coming out tonight. We could do this all over again and have a whole bunch more stories, because there's so many things that we've not even touched on that were amazing experiences. So, church people, you need a good Sabbath school program. You need somebody to tell a children's story. You need, listen, these kids are a wealth, and your chaperones, you saw them stand up. These people have a lot of stories that they can tell now. So just thank you again for coming out this evening. And
1 second, Miss MD.
Yes.
I think the whole student body and the whole community wants to thank you for being such a good organizer, good everything. Just know that God has used you to change all of our lives through these mission trips, and we love you so much, Miss Cindy.
It is my pleasure. This brings me such joy. I love mission trips. I love planning them. I love being on the mission trip with the kids, getting to know them and see them, and you would be so proud of these kids. They're just amazing when they go on these mission trips, and they're amazing other times too, but they just shine when we go places, and it's just exciting to take them places and to have these experiences with them. And the last big question is, where are we going to go next year? And I have to tell you that where we're going to go in 2025 is still in the works, and only God knows. So if you would keep praying about that, we would appreciate that, because we don't know yet. But we will go, the Lord willing, and continue to serve the Lord. Let's close with a prayer. Dear Lord, we're so excited that we could share our stories, and there's so many more things that we could tell, so many more memories that we have. And Lord, I just ask that these special memories and these special times, these times where the kids have seen you, that you place that in their hearts and that they remember that forever and ever. And when life gets tough, when times get rough, and they have questions in their hearts, that they pull back out of the recesses of their mind those memories of where they knew their faith was sure and strong and where they saw you work powerfully. Help them to remember these experiences, that their faith might grow and strengthen, and that we might all have a home in heaven with you someday. And these precious children and these precious people that we met in Kenya and that we worked with, that we will all sit at Jesus' feet someday and sing praises to your mighty and holy name. And we ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Happy Sabbath, and thank you again.
No.